This portion of the news is brought to you by Inspiration Senior Living, where we provide affordable elegance to Pahrump area seniors. Give us a call at 751-2300 and make an appointment to tour our community.
Preschool children who experience repeated episodes of severe lower respiratory tract infections often present with symptoms like wheezing and difficulty breathing. A new study looked at whether a common antibiotic given early in these episodes could prevent the illness from getting worse.
This health tip is brought to you by
Desert View Hospital and Mountain Valley Physicians Group. Don't put your health on hold. We have time for you. Call us to schedule your appointment. 775-751-7100.
When preschool children experience repeated lower respiratory infections, it's much more than just a simple cold.
Well, lower respiratory tract illness is a cold that ends up going to the chest and that causes substantial coughing, wheezing, shortness of breath.
The usual treatment often includes steroids like prednisone.
We want to provide a safe alternative that allows these children to experience fewer episodes.
Dr. Leonard Becarier from Washington University in St. Louis and co-authors studied more than 600 children from 1 to 6 years old with a history of repeated episodes of severe respiratory illness. Children were randomly assigned to either receive the antibiotic azithromycin or a placebo early in these episodes.
The parents were to have this medicine at home and were to start it at the very earliest signs of an illness in an effort to try to prevent the progression of the episodes. The children in the azithromycin group were significantly less likely to have progression of their episodes to the point where prednisone would have been required.
Researchers also looked at whether increased antibiotic use could result in more bacterial resistance.
There was a slight increase in the number of children who had resistant organisms at the end of the study among those who received azithromycin compared to those who received placebo, but the numbers were relatively small.
Dr. Becarier says further research is needed to understand how often these resistant organisms will emerge.
How to put this strategy into clinical practice is going to take some time. This requires a proactive discussion with the child's health care provider in advance so that if this strategy is to be undertaken, it is available at home with the parent well instructed as to the earliest signs of illness and knows when to start this.
Catherine Dolf, The JAMA Report.
Dr. Becarier says even when used perfectly, there are many children who will develop severe illness despite these therapies.
2 vehicles sustained major damage after colliding Friday morning on Highway 372. A 2-vehicle accident occurred on Saturday morning on Highway 372 in the westbound lanes in front of the Bank of America entrance. Nevada Highway Patrol, Nye County Sheriff's deputies, and Pahrump Valley Fire and Rescue all arrived on scene. Traffic was diverted around the accident during the investigation by Nevada Highway Patrol. 1 person was transported from the scene as a result of this accident. Both vehicles sustained major damage. How the accident occurred will be determined by Nevada Highway Patrol. This is Deanna O'Donnell for News 46.
Fire Chief Scott Lewis discusses another accident, this one on Saturday afternoon.
Saturday afternoon, we were dispatched a report of a 2-vehicle accident. Upon arrival, we found this accident, actually found that there was actually a person trapped in the car. That patient was quickly removed and from harm, and they were then transported.
Were they mechanically or physically entrapped?
They were mechanically entrapped in the vehicle.
And then who was transported? How many?
I believe 1 was transported to the local hospital.
And that was the person that was entrapped?
That's correct.
What type of accident was it?
I believe it was a T-bone type collision.
A lot of accidents over the weekend. Armed protesters took over the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge south of Burns, Oregon on Saturday after participating in a peaceful rally over the prison sentences of local ranchers Dwight and Stephen Hammond. The Hammonds were convicted of arson 3 years ago for fires that burned on federal land in 2001 and 2006. The protest is part of a decades-old long dispute between some Westerners and the federal government over the use of public lands. Brothers Amon and Ryan Bundy are among those occupying the refuge. Their father, Cliven Bundy, was involved in the 2014 standoff with the government over grazing rights in Nevada.
Another home caught fire over the weekend. Luckily, no one was hurt and no major damage was done to the residents on Happy Lane.
Yesterday afternoon, mid-afternoon, we were dispatched a report of a structure fire in 791 Happy Lane. Actually, it went out as 911 Happy Lane. The owner actually owns both properties and called in the wrong address. We actually found smoke emanating from the underside of the structure. It was a double-wide manufactured, and a light smoke condition within the interior. We found that he had been conducting a controlled burn prior to it. It escaped him and went up underneath the structure and started igniting the under the floor insulation and plastic material. So our crews arrived quickly, and they stretched their hand lines and pulled all the skirting away from the structure. They could follow the migrating fire, so they actually crawled underneath the structure and were able to track it down and extinguish it without any further damage.
How much was the home actually damaged in the end?
You know, in the end, it wasn't damaged at all. It's relatively easy to fix. It's a matter of just replacing some of the burned insulation on the underside of the structure, but we didn't have to put any holes in the floor, and we didn't have to do any damage to the outside of the structure other than removing the skirting.
A quick response to save this home, right?
Quick response, but what really helped was a quick notification.
Yeah.
You know, once he realized that his house was on fire, first thing he did was 911, and it really helps us because it gives us that opportunity to get there timely.
Instead of trying to put it out himself, call 911.
Absolutely. Every second counts.
Let's talk about controlled burns and precautions that you need to take.
Yeah, and you know, it was a very interesting, very nice gentleman, and he said, I never realized, because there wasn't that much of a fire load that he was dealing with on the controlled burn. It was relatively small. And he didn't even realize that it got up underneath the structure. So that's what we keep re-emphasizing and reinforcing to our citizens, is to be extremely careful and keep the fires away from the structures.
And more local news when we return.